back to Teach a Man to Fish channel. Today's video is going to be making deer burger as well as a cook. Down below I will put a link. If you're here for the cook part of the video, I'll put a time link there and you can jump right to it. Let's go ahead and get started. So there is a bit of an investment when you're getting set up to make your own hamburger out of deer meat. Obviously, a sharp knife is critical and important. A tub or tray or something to collect your trimmings and then ultimately the ground beef. A grinder. I do a little bit of beef fat add, probably ends up being less than 1%, maybe 2%. I think it gives the right texture, flavor. A little bit of fat helps in the cooking process. You decide what flavor works for you. I found when I trim a brisket that's the best fat for me to work into the meat. During this video, we'll be discussing several critical parts of both preparing the meat, working it, one of which, probably the first thing to discuss, is temperature. You want that meat chilled down cold, certainly when it goes into the grinder. Otherwise, what you end up getting is smearing, which is basically mushing the meat through the grinder. You don't want that. You want your grinder cutting the chilled down meat. So first thing we need to do is go ahead and get this, I believe this is a ham. Go ahead and get this trimmed up, get that meat trimmed up into cubes. It feeds into the grinder better. So what I've got here, it looks like it was maybe a couple of different deer, different parts of the ham. Looks like I've got a football roast in here, some of the other portions. So this we'll have to clean up, clean all these connective tissues, this blue skin that's on the externals, some of the tendons that connect the muscles together. I've also got a shoulder with those ham parts that I'm going to work into this batch as well. Obviously that's a smaller deer, but there's some good hamburger meat to be found on the shoulder of the deer as well. So pretty much you have to have three things in order for meat to go bad. One being temperature. Everyone knows about that. The quicker you can get the heat out of that meat, the longer your meat's gonna last and you're not gonna get that spoiled. Second thing is moisture. If there is no moisture in that meat, it's not going to spoil. For example, jerky. That's how jerky ends up not having to be refrigerated. And the third thing is contamination. So when we're doing the butchering in the field and the knife isn't clean or our hands aren't clean or you may drop something on the ground or the surface that you're working on, contamination is everywhere. It's a fact. We're not working in meatpacking plants, so it's just something to consider. You want to do your best to control contamination, and when you get back to your more sterile area, take that into consideration and get some of that grime and grit or whatever's in there off the meat. Go ahead and trim it out and get rid of that. Break any one of those three and you end up getting a better tasting, better preserved, longer lasting venison cut. So we talked about a sharp knife being critical. Here you can see that in that blue skin, that knife just glides through like a razor. Now, because I'm making burger, I don't necessarily get real uptight about all of the grit and the tendons and the blue skin, all of it being cut off and trimmed out. It is going to be ground up, but just know that the more, especially the fat carries a lot of gamey flavorness as well. It's easy to see, it's easy to find, it's easy to trim out. At this point you can see where some of your fish cleaning, filleting skills come into play, because where you've got this thin strip and heavy tendon on the other side, You can just use your knife just like you would skin the fillet. Go down and then kind of angle your knife and run it along the meat, and what you're left with is the tendon left behind. When you're separating out, especially in the ham, it's got large muscles in it that you're separating along those lines. And usually at the points of those cuts is where the tendons get the heaviest. So right in through there, you can see I'm exposing that football roast is right inside there, and that connective tissue just comes right away with it. And as you head towards the point through here, that's where those tendons concentrate at the point of that muscle. So that's a big hard knot of connective tissue right there that we're just going to cut all of that right out. And by the way, all of these trimmings, none of it goes to waste. I actually end up feeding it to my chickens, and I turn all of this into eggs. And my chickens love me for it. Again, none of this goes to waste. I turn it all into eggs. And look the way the knife slides through that, how lean that is. It's just a beautiful cut right off of that ham, the exterior portion of the ham. I call it the flat steak. I'm sure a butcher calls it something else, and I am not a butcher. So later on in the video, you'll see why I cut these into these long strips like this. It makes the feeding process into the chute so much easier when all you have to do is hold the top and it just feeds right in to the chute and into the grinder. Look at that. That is beautiful cut of meat there. Almost too good for burger. Other than the fact that I love deer burgers. So now we're down to the point of cutting up the beef fat into its strips. And again, I saved this from a brisket that I did many months ago. And this goes into the mix as well. There's the trimmed out, cleaned up couple of hams, a little bit of a shoulder, beef fat add. It's gotten a little bit warm during this process, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the fridge or in the freezer for a bit to chill it down some. And now we get to get really busy with the actual grinding. So the grinder that I'm using here is not terribly expensive. For less than $150, you can get this grinder. I think it fits every need that your average person would want. It's easy to assemble, easy to clean. I've learned a few lessons with it, and you'll get to see the performance right now. This is the basics that you will pull out of the kit for grinding up your deer meat. It comes with many other types of plates and other attachments and a sausage stuffer, and I don't use those obviously in making the deer meat. I use the largest plate that we have, and I'll show you real quick the assembly. It's easy to do. There's the blade. Now, if you do get one of these, don't run it through the dishwasher. That's what I did, and it ends up removing the protective coating that's over this, so we'll always wash it by hand. That's it, fully assembled, ready to start grinding. Let's go ahead and get started. A little noisy, so I'll dampen the sound some, but here we go. That was round one. The next go round will be the second grind, and it ends up looking more like what you're used to, and that fat will get dispersed throughout. There it is. At this point, it's just a matter of cleaning up and going on to the next portion of this video, which will be actually doing Salisbury steak and mushroom gravy. If you're joining in this part, we're moving on to the second portion of this video, which is the cook, and it will be Salisbury steak out of the venison, out of the deer meat that we just ground up into burger. We'll make the Salisbury steak out of that. And I'll tell you something about that grinder. Again, we probably made those two small hams and a shoulder, probably made somewhere around 12 pounds of burger. So figured this is really lean burger meat. I bet you this in my region would probably run somewhere around $4.50 to $5 a pound at this leanness. So you're already talking, that's $60 of burger that we just made, and that grinder only costs under $150. So it pays back really quick once you start to get into the rhythm and start to process your own deer meat through the grinder. Here's all the ingredients that we'll need for the rest of this cook. I know it looks complicated, but it's only Salisbury steak. Goes together quick and easy. You just start throwing things together and this happens quickly. So we've got, obviously you can mix up the ingredients as you see fit, but this is how I like to make it. Canned mushrooms because it's easy. Garlic, butter, cornstarch, onions, eggs, Cavendars all-purpose Greek seasoning, Better Than Bouillon beef bouillon, black pepper, salt, and I've got two binders sitting out here. One's oatmeal, and then I'm gonna try this carb quick. Just for the carb conscious out there, I'm gonna make a few of them. The last thing that I'll add will be the binders, and I'll separate some out just to see how this comes out. Should be interesting. And this will all be done in the Lodge Dutch oven that we have here. And I'll also be using the Lodge Sportsman Grill in a unique way for Salisbury steak. You won't find this anywhere else. Let's go ahead and start throwing things together. I use oatmeal as a binder. A lot of people use breadcrumbs. Whatever your preferred binder is, obviously throw that in yours. Now let's go ahead and throw some carb quick in this other one. That's what we're using. As our binder in the low carb ones. So most people fry their Salisbury steak in a skillet or in the Dutch oven. I like to put some charcoal flavor into mine by putting them on Lodge Sportsman's Grill here. And as with all other Lodge Sportsman's Grill, start out with your damper door closed, because you can always add heat. It's a lot more difficult to take away the heat. Keep this fire running a little hot, so we'll add a few more coals in. The beauty of the Lodge Sportsman's Grill, it's real simple to just add a few more coals, keep it stoked. For phase 2. So I can tell that this one and this one, wait, maybe I can't tell. This one and this one are both the ones that we put the carb quick in, and you can see, which can often be a problem with deer meat, is binding and holding together. And you can tell between the egg and that carb quick, it's holding together fine. I believe we're starting to come up to temp here. I want to hit somewhere around 120, 130. Yeah, there we go, 129. 132. So they're about 95% done. I'm going to go ahead and pull them off now and start phase 2 of this cook. Look at all that juice coming out. All that's going to go right into the Dutch oven during the next part of this cook. Look at that. All right, let's convert this over to a stovetop. With my grill gloves, I'm able to handle this grate without any pain. Set that to the side. And if you've seen my other video where I converted this over to a wood stove stovetop, just for fun, it's a fun way to cook. But in that video, I used the grates to hold the stovetop. And since then, I've made this adapter that fits this stovetop perfectly. And converts us over to a stovetop grill for the next part of the cook. Just, I know I could do this in the oven or on the side burner or on the grill, but this is just what I enjoy doing. I've got the coals burning, why not? You'll also see I've got it pretty well oiled. I'll be seasoning this at the same time as this cook is happening as well. So at this point, I'm going to concentrate most of the coals over onto one side. Keep that side pretty hot. Go ahead and pull this lid. Bring over my Dutch oven, put it in that space, and start to make our gravy. And just real quick, if you know anything about the history of the Lodge Sportsman's Grill, it goes back to the 1930s, and it was actually an iron heater, kind of like a clothes iron. That's how this hibachi grill started its life back then in the home. They used it as a flat iron heater. So that's onions, garlic, salt, and black pepper. Just a little bit of salt because we're going to be putting some beef bouillon in here that's pretty salty in and of itself. Starting to get a little rain. Uh-oh. Now that those onions are pretty much broken down, a little caramelized, we'll go ahead and continue on with the fixing of the gravy. I think I forgot to mention in the beginning that I also use mushroom soy sauce. If you can't find it, just use Worcestershire sauce. I can never say that word, but you know what I'm talking about. This is what I use, and it's not a whole lot in the gravy. You'd find that most other people use Worcestershire sauce. One drained, one not drained. Now that that's up to temperature, we'll go ahead and stir in our cornstarch. And again, this is more of a feel than anything else. Because you definitely don't want it too thick. Now we will let that come up to temp. That is about the consistency we want. It's going to continue to simmer down. Let's go ahead and put the steaks back in there to finish that last 5 or 10% of the cook. Simmer in that gravy. Sorry about my rooster there. He complains about everything. Now I'm gonna close that damper down some, just to make certain I'm not too high. I can always add heat, but it's tougher to take it away. Let's let that simmer for about 30-45 minutes. While that's simmering down out there, I'm gonna go ahead and just show you all the rest of that. I go ahead and store, and basically it's 1 pound packages, plus minus. Put them in little Ziploc bags. I don't get real fancy with for the length of storage. I don't go for the vacuum seal. There's just no reason for me to jump through those hoops because this will not last that long. But I will freeze it. I wonder what they do weigh. So your average package, that's a little over 1.5 pounds. So there you go, into the freezer it goes. So I was probably right, that was probably about 12 pounds of burger, maybe 15. And if you think about how much burger this lean would cost, that grinder pays for itself within a deer or two. All right, that's simmered down enough, I do believe. And I know you can't smell it, but this smells completely different than just plain old fried in the bottom of a cast iron skillet. It's picked up some of that smoky flavor. Those grill marks will impart another flavor in there. Let's go ahead and get this off the hibachi here and take it on inside. So this video, YouTube says is perfect for your viewing habits. And this playlist is more venison and cast iron cooking. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click like, subscribe, share, and come on back for more.